hello, and welcome to episode 61 of Gondor Calls for Ale, a Middle-earth strategy battle games podcast. I am your host, Sam Gallagher, and with me, as always, is my brother Ben.
Hello, listeners and viewers, and welcome to the show. I love how you say, as always, is my brother Ben on the show, and I'm not always on the show. I'm on the show like 99% of the time, but you've done a couple episodes without me.
Yeah.
It cracks me up when I go back through and listen to these episodes.
Well, I mean-
and as always, I'm like, as always in spirit at least,
Right, exactly. Precisely, Ben.
but here in person today.
Yes, yeah, he's back for a few. I mean, that's the thing, is it's few and far between are the times that you are not with me. So maybe
True.
if I was slightly more creative or willing to think about it, I could come up with a more punchier intro some of these times. But I'm
You know,
not
there's one faithful listener out there who's like, Sam.
we can hope. We
We hope.
can
I
hope.
dream.
But yeah, welcome if this is your 61st listening or viewing. Not that you can have viewed all 61 episodes. Or if this is your first listening or viewing, welcome to Gondor Calls for Ale, a podcast where we ramble as clearly demonstrated. The other thing about this podcast, dear listener, dear viewer, and dear brother of mine, is of course the ale, Ben. So let's get into that. What are you drinking this fine evening?
Well, Sam, for this episode, I have myself a Stormcrow Stout, a beer that has often been called a harbinger of dire times to come, but sometimes too a harbinger of hope.
Yeah, a harbinger of a little bumbling there, perhaps.
Yeah, a little Ben bumbling his drink, a little stutter happening. Yeah. Well, while I'm stuttering through this delicious beverage, Sam, what are you drinking this evening?
Well, Ben, I'm having a deadly shot, which, as you should know, is served in one of two ways. It's either 3 shots, which is how I'm having it, or one that's guaranteed to hit, at least most of the time anyway.
Nice. Perhaps a reference to old Legolas there, Sam. I do wonder, when you play Legolas, do you usually go for the 3, or are you a 2+ to hit Legolas sort of man?
It depends. If I'm most of the time, it's probably all 3. If he hasn't moved, it's almost all, unless there's like, I need to kill this hero's horse.
Yeah.
Or like that specific thing over there. Most of the time, I would rather just take the 3 shots into 3 dudes and have more chances to kill. But
Sounds good to me.
probably, I mean, it's he's kind of like having a wizard. It's just a tool you can use for when it matters. Well, speaking, so we've done our beers, Ben. We've done our little question about Legolas, I suppose. A little aside. You want to tell the viewer, the listener, what we're talking about in this episode?
Well, this is the continuation of our coverage of the Nova Grand Tournament, a 1,000-point veto tournament that we attended this August. We covered our first 2 games each in the previous episode, and we are just diving right into it with our next 3 games each. That's right, we've got 6 battle reports coming your way.
Yeah. It was. I think you or we, as you reminded me yesterday, because spoiler alert, this is the second time we've done this. Oh, technical difficulties. We spoiled who won and stuff at the end of last, or partway through, at some time during the last episode. So you will know at the end of this episode how Ben and I specifically did, and we will go over those placings and stuff again. All right, Ben. Before we get into games, we've got some classic Gondor Calls for Ale announcements before we roll into those games, shall we say? Yes, that's right, Ben. This is Sam's beautiful segue into talking about Gondor Calls for Ale's official sponsor, the Baron of Dice. Not the Duke of Dice, Ben. That's right, the Baron of Dice, who makes beautiful hand-swirled resin dice with those oh-so-crispy square corners if you want them, or nice rounded if you're into those beveled edges. He has over 3,000 different dice combinations you can have, and there is a large number of ones specifically for the Middle-earth strategy battle game. So if you want some perfectly balanced dice that are guaranteed by Gondor Calls for Ale to roll 6s at least some of the time, you should always check out the Baron. If you want to get some of those dice, there is a link in wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast in the description. Along with that link, there is a promo code to get yourself a little discount. If you want to use that promo code, it is, of course, capital G, capital C, capital A. Helps us out, helps the Baron out, and yeah, it helps get you some sweet dice.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that, Sam. And thank you to the Baron. We do appreciate your sponsorship.
Yeah.
So, Sam, onwards, I think, into some games. Do you want to tell me all about your game 3?
I certainly do, Ben. So, for my game 3, we were playing a little burn the supplies action, which you know, do you know what a janitor says when he jumps out of the closet?
What's that, Sam?
Supplies.
What does a janitor say?
He doesn't
Supplies.
Doesn't necessarily burn them anyway. So that was a well done joke there. Ben, do you want to give us a quick read through of Burn the Supplies, and then I'll get into what this game was all about?
Well, it's funny, Sam. I can't find any Burn the Supplies, but I can certainly read through Destroy the Supplies.
Oh wow! I have actually written Burn Supplies as the name of the scenario, so nailed it. I was reading. I was just wrong in the writing.
Yeah, that is okay. All right, scenario 16: Destroy the Supplies. A game that ends on the turn in which one force has been reduced to 25% of its starting number. We've got a sweet 12-inch deployment zone with 3 objectives evenly spaced down that 12-inch line. The objectives are the supply markers. To destroy an enemy supply marker, a model must be in base contact with the marker during the end phase of a turn, having not cast any magical powers, used a missile weapon, or been involved in a fight, or been under the effects of paralyze, immobilize, or transfix magical powers that turn. Once a supply marker has been destroyed, remove it from play. You score 2 victory points for each enemy supply marker that has been destroyed, 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader, 2 if you kill them, 1 for breaking the enemy force, 2 if they are broken and you are not, 1 victory point if you have a banner, and 2 if you have a banner and your opponent doesn't. Alright, Sam, what were you looking at across the field for Destroy the Supplies?
Yeah, so I was playing against John, and this was an awesome game to end day 1 on. He was playing the host of the Dragon Emperor, so his army was, of course, led by the Dragon Emperor. He had Rutabi, Brogia, and 3 Dragon Knights on horse. He also had a drum, and then a bunch of various Easterlings of shapes and sizes.
3 Dragon Knights.
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, it was. It was a pretty cool Easterling army. But yeah, so I think we basically... So I vetoed in this pool, Seize the Prize, because he had models on horse and a drum, so he was just definitely going to be able to... And probably I don't know actually if he has a march in there. Anyway, but he was probably going to be able to push past the prize and dig it up, and it was just like I was never going to get to it. And he vetoed Retrieval, which makes sense.
Yeah, fair enough.
Easier for me to defend 1 objective than 3, so we ended up playing Destroy the Supplies, which I think basically in this matchup, with this scenario, we sort of both were going into this game kind of with a foregone conclusion. We were playing on, if you're viewing, you can see, if you're listening, we were playing on a pretty cool like Easterling themed board.
Yeah, I like this table a lot.
Yeah, it's very cool. I basically just like clumped it down across like my center supply and sort of just spread out either side of it, and John put heavily weighted most of his army on the right hand side, and then sort of had the rest of them behind this big building that was like kind of a pain for him to move around in his deployment zone, and a little force off on the left. I'm going to go through this game relatively quickly. That's probably true for most of my games in this. You know, it's 1,000 points. There's a lot going on, but also I have an extra large amount going on because I've got 10 Dunedain who can call, or Rangers of the North, I guess technically, who can use might and stuff, so I didn't really do a great job of tracking it. But it also just, especially with this game, just ends up sort of like not hugely mattering. So in turn 1 goes to me, and I just stay put. John drums, sends his army forwards. He does move all his Dragon Knights so they stay outside of my bow range, which makes sense because if he ever put them in bow range, I would have called a free heroic accuracy with Aragorn and just shot my entire army at a Dragon Knight and hopefully kill a couple of them before they got into combat. Especially given that they get a point of might back for every single one of my models. they kill. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But I probably spend a bunch of might to do this, but I do get 4 kills this turn with bows. This is a really tough matchup, right? Because it's shooting, I need 6s to wound them, and they're all fight 5, basically, so they all outfight me, except for my heroes, and they still outfight Halberd. So turn 2 goes to me is, again, again, I stay put and get another 2 kills with shooting. You can probably start moving some of these slides forwards, Ben. There are like
And this is about here that we get into some actual
action.
Yeah,
so turn 3, which is I think around what this is. John's just drumming forwards, right? And so we start getting some combats. Excuse me. Basically, what ends up happening in this game is I sort of like give up my 2 flanks. I have a bit of a token. I have more resistance on my right hand flank and most of my army in the center, and then my left hand flank is like being protected by like 4 Dunedain and Gimli. So my sort of plan was to try and kill his smaller force on that side, and then maybe if the game goes long enough, I can throw a Dunedain back to his objectives because he has nobody holding them. So in turn 3 we get some fights. I think one of the Dragon Knights gets into Elro here. He calls a strike. I call a strike, and I also have to spend a point of might to win the fight. And Aragorn has to spend his free point of might to win the fight, and Legolas spends a point of might to get a kill. Basically, he has enough Easterlings that I just need to be killing them. Turn 4, we get some more combat. We have a move off. The move goes to me, and I'm just like slowly shrinking back into the middle. I really didn't do a great job of marking down. I think this turn he burns my right hand supply. I managed to hold the left hand supply for a few more turns, but I'm doing a good job of killing Easterlings. It's just he's also killing a couple of rangers, and so my numbers are starting to dwindle, and then all of my rangers are suddenly fighting fighting 2 dice against 3 to 6 kind of thing.
And it looks like the Dragon Emperor is not even really in the fight yet. So
the Dragon Emperor doesn't do anything in this game. So turn 5 we get some more combats. Aragorn calls a combat. Aragorn really didn't have a game in this one. He had a couple turns fighting. Calling a combat into 2 Easterlings and just not killing both of them. Brogir also channeled Fury in this game, and we mostly forgot about it. But I reminded him a couple times, and he would roll the rolled the 6 on the first time I reminded him. Try to be the credit get that nice guy credit in there where you're I reminded you, but you still failed. And he passed a couple on the Dragon Knights, which was super annoying, and they just didn't go down. And Aragorn whiffed a couple of fights. So turn 5 we get some more combats. I lose Elro here at this point. Turn 6 we get more combats. Legolas dies, Elladan dies, and Halbarad all die. And the game is essentially over. We play one more turn. Aragorn manages to get into the Dragon Emperor, who this is the only combat he sees the entire game, because he's just such a big base, and I have so few models. He basically has to purposely make a space for him to get through. So Aragorn gets into the Dragon Emperor, and I believe a Dragon Knight as well. I use my free strike. I think at that point in time the Dragon Emperor is out of might. I strike higher, I win the fight, and then just don't do a single wound to him, I don't think, which is, needing 4s is a bit disappointing. On 3 dice you'd expect at least 1 wound. But yeah, that was sort of all this game really was. It was a really fun game. We split a bucket of beer, so there was plenty of drinking involved, and John played. It didn't have to play well to win. I think this was really a mission that favored him, and a matchup that favored him. I mean, it's a great company. Most people, I think, are favored against them. But it was he played it well, and it was a highly enjoyable game. And ended up being a major loss, 1-9. So I did end up breaking him. I cut through Easterlings. My heroes just, it took a while, but we did get through them. But he managed to burn all my supplies, kill my banner, so he had a banner. and I believe he broke me as well. So that was it. A major loss to end game 3, but it was a fun one, and sort of like relaxing going into a game. You know, there are games you go into where you have an army that like stands a chance. You know, I've played Big Al a number of times, or some other opponents where I go in, I'm like, I'm gonna lose this game. They're just gonna be better than me, and I've like go in with a very defeatist attitude, which can of course cause you to lose the game. It is kind of relaxing, I think, playing something like the Grey Company. You go in and you're like, I can't win this game. Like I probably won't win this game, but might as well try, you know, and at least kill a bunch of models. But it's kind of relaxing not to be like, okay, this is like you know, maybe they're 60% favored. Maybe I'm playing like whatever, some, you know, a horde of Moran and Orcs in the army of Gothmog, and it's like, well, the Easterlings could really beat me up. They might be slightly more powerful, but like I could still win this, you know.
You could have that one turn with Time of the Orc where you just kill like 14 Easterlings.
Or not even that, but you're just like, I have the numbers, I have the tools, I can win this if I play this well, whereas this is sort of like, I could play amazing and he could play really badly, outside of just like choosing not to burn my supply markers. Still probably it ends up in a loss. So good game, fun opponent, would play again.
Awesome. Nice end to day 1. But onwards, Sam, into my game 3. I was playing against John, and in the veto off, I think it came down, I vetoed first and got rid of Destroy the Supplies. And so it was him choosing between Retrieval and Seize the Prize, and he chose to play Seize the Prize.
All right, Ben. I will read Seize the prize, or Burn the Prize, or Seize the Artifact. Who's to say?
Deadly Shot's really taking its effect there, Sam.
Now, if you're viewing, you can see the beautiful deployment map. If of course you're listening, I can either find you a box or describe it to you. Just kidding, I will describe it to you. So you have 12-inch up deployment zones and a artifact. In fact, it is the artifact in the center of the board. And we have a game that lasts until, well, I'll read the other stuff. We'll get to the end conditions. We'll keep that in suspense. So we have some special rules. We'll do this all backwards. Special rules. The artifact must be dug out of the soil before it can be carried anywhere. An infantry model in base contact with the artifact marker at the end of its move may attempt to free it. Roll d6 on a 4+. The artifact has been freed. The artifact is treated as a light object. Might cannot be used to influence this roll. Only one model from each side may attempt to pick up the artifact each turn. Alright, we've got some victory points. You score 3 victory points if one of your models is carrying the artifact in your own board half. If one of your models is carrying your artifact in your opponent's board half, instead you score 5. If one of your models is carrying the artifact and manages to move off the board edge, off of the board edge via your opponent's table edge, you instead score 7 victory points. You score 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader. If you kill the enemy leader instead, you score 2. You score 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken at the end of the game. The enemy force is broken and your force is unbroken. Instead, you score 3. Alright, now we're getting to how the game ends. The game lasts until either a model carrying the artifact carries it off the board edge via their opponent's table edge, or both forces have been reduced to 25% of their starting number.
It's the only one that ends on both.
It is
at 25, isn't it? You found that out to your terror with a troll chief.
Yeah, much
your terror to your error.
Chagrin.
Yeah, chagrin. That's the word. Well, Sam, onwards into the game itself, and John was playing with an alliance of the fiefdoms, allied with Minas Tirith, allied with Rohan. So his army was led by Imrahil. Then he had Forlong the Fat, Faramir as Ranger Faramir with just the bow, and then he had Eomer and 4 or 5 riders of Rohan. And he spread out his army, deployed. He kind of had to. I think he had like 65 models or something, at least 60, if not more than that. And I deployed in a big clump. I like to deploy in a clump with this army and with most of my armies. So deployed in a big clump, and I took first turn priority and decided to call a march with Madril. We did not get the march move off battle, so I just moved straight up. All my infantry rush up as far as they can. Gandalf and Boromir and my 2 mounted Citadel Guard go riding forwards. One of the Citadel Guard dismounts in an attempt to dig up the relic and rolls a 5 and digs up the relic on turn 1. Gandalf also then throws up a blinding light so that any shooting that John wants to throw my way will be blinded and not be a problem for me.
That's even
John takes the next turn priority, so I call a move with Madril, and he calls a move with Forlong. The move goes to me, which essentially means I've now picked up the relic, and I can now move with the relic bearer freely. So the relic bearer comes back and passes the relic off to Gandalf. Boromir goes charging forwards, and the remaining mounted Citadel Guard just covers his flank against a countercharge of cavalry, and then my infantry all just rush up in an attempt to sort of wall the relic bearer off. Thinking back on this game, I think I overextended with Boromir. He didn't die, but he spent the rest of the game sitting in this one space, just surrounded by men-at-arms of Dol Amroth, with the pike guys and a couple of foot knights in there, and all the other Dol Amroth forces. And he would roll a 5 to win his fight and have to spend a point of might, and then kill a couple of guys, but he was really stonewalled, and I think I should have had him back a little bit further inside my battle line. You can see here that there would have been room. Anyway, onwards into the game. So Gandalf throws an immobilize at Imrahil, who resists it, and in the combat phase, Imrahil calls a heroic combat and kills a couple of guys, but then completely biffs his follow through. So he's not able to punch through the second wall of my shield wall. He kills 2 guys and then just completely fails to get the other 2. Boromir, as mentioned, spends a point of might to win his fight. I get 3 kills this turn and lose 4. I take the next turn priority, and we throw another immobilize at Imrahil, but just completely fail to get it off. Theodred charges into combat this turn, and I should say that John calls a move with Imrahil, and I call a move with Boromir. The move once again goes to me, so we just re-engage. Theodred calls a heroic combat, has to spend a point of might to win it, but it's totally worth it because I kill 10 models this turn and only lose 6. Yeah, a good turn for me. But he's got so many guys, and they're like coming into this center of the board that I'm really not going to be able to push through. I was hoping that I'd be able to crack through his line and just ride through with Gandalf. So I've got 2 options, both of which revolve around knocking cavalry off of their horses. I'm either going to try and dismount these Knights of Dol Amroth who are next to this building and try and get Gandalf through that gap, or I'm going to try and do the same thing with a Sorcerer's Blast to Eomer and his warband who are riding around the flank. So we get into turn 4, which John takes priority. Forlong calls a move, Gandalf calls a move, but this time the move goes to Forlong. We get battle lines re-engage. Theodred has to call a strike this turn. He's surrounded by 5 men-at-arms and then whiffs his roll and gets killed. I only get 2 kills this turn and take 4 casualties, so John is catching up again. Unfortunately for Forlong also biffs his combat roll, has to spend a point of fate, and also loses a wound this turn. Oh, it was the strike off Faramir was the reason that Theodred was striking. Theodred was fighting Faramir. Faramir won the strike off against Theodred and managed to kill Theodred. He wasn't surrounded by men-at-arms. The men-at-arms were fighting Boromir.
Sounds like Faramir, Captain of Gondor, showed his quality.
He did show his quality. Maybe I should have brought Faramir instead of Theodred.
Yeah.
Who's to say? All right. But on this turn also, Sam, we get a sneaky Sorcerer's Blast from Gandalf, and I'm able to take Eomer off his horse, and a couple of the riders of Rohan are dismounted as well.
Nice.
Yeah, and because of where Eomer is, I'm essentially able to keep him trapped with some warriors of Gondor. He's not prone. I didn't actually charge him this turn. I just moved next to him so that when he stands up, he can't go anywhere next turn. And if I win the move off next turn, I can engage him and keep him on the ground. And basically, this lets me get Gandalf off the board over the next 2 turns. I'm able to... I don't remember if I won the move off against Eomer or not, but it didn't matter because Eomer and none of his riders were able to engage Gandalf. So Gandalf is able to then, over the next 2 turns, use that sweet 12-inch move to just ride off the board, and I win this one 7-3. It was a close thing. I almost didn't pull it off. I really thought it was going to come out to a tie with me broken and sitting on the relic in my deployment half.
Well, an excellent game. Gandalf and Shadowfax showing everyone the meaning of haste.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
He's a very expensive mount for what he mostly does nothing. But nice that he actually did something there. He should have the same rule that the White Warg does. He should like stick around with his own profile.
Oh, that'd be
If
awesome.
you dismount them, they like separate in Shadowfax. It's like, come at me, bro. That'd be awesome. I'd be into it. All right, then. Should we get into my game 4? Actually, before we do, we're gonna quickly talk about our companion podcast, which is, of course, reviewing of hotels and various nightly activities. We don't. That's not a podcast that exists, but it is something we oft joke about because I think this was one of the most fun Novas we've had as far as like doing stuff afterwards. So on the Saturday night after day 1, we went out. We went out with the guys from North Carolina and one of our new, or I guess you've known him for a couple of events now. I met him for the first time at Nova. So a new friend, Paul. We went out. We got some tacos. We got some drinks. Then we went to an adult beverage store and got more drinks and came back to the Lord of the Rings hall and like drank quite copious amounts of alcohol and just bullshitted around and had an absolutely awesome time.
Yeah, we did.
And went to bed far too late and slightly too drunk, I think.
Oh yeah. Not half as drunk as we could have been, but my wits were not nearly as about me as I like to have them.
I thought you were going with not half as drunk as you would have liked to be, but twice as
less than half as drunk as we deserve. Yeah, I was going to, and then couldn't figure it out either.
I picked it up. I can never remember that. That's one of the ones I like stop and think about every time to make sense because I'm a little bit dumb.
I think that's partly what makes it funny because Bilbo's like, "Gotcha, hobbits."
Yeah. Well, precisely. But I think I was more saying that I, a man, an educated man, have am as able to get as a Proudfoot's hobbit, and can't speak either. Fantastic. Actually, with one more thing before we get into day 2, and our last 4 games of this episode is Ben. I don't remember but what was your record at the end of day 1?
So I had lost my first 2 games and finally managed to get 1 win at the end of day 1 there, playing against John.
Excellent.
And I think you were also sitting on 1 win and 2 losses, is that right?
Yes, except I won the most important game 1. No, I won my first one and lost my next 2, so...
Nice.
Yeah, alright, now we can finally move into game 4.
Alright, Sam, onwards into game 4. Tell me all about it. Give me those details. What was the scenario and who were you playing against?
Well, Ben, the scenario is not written down on my sheet, so I believe
it's domination.
Yes. And I was playing against Hagen, who was playing I believe, the Riders of Theoden. I say believe because he never called death, and there were a few opportunities to. Well, I mean, but anyway, but everything else, it could have been the Riders of Theoden. If he wasn't, he was strictly doing it because he didn't like that Legendary Legion for some reason.
All right, so possibly the Riders of Theoden in domination. Scenario number 1, we've got a game that ends when one force has been reduced to 25% of its starting number. And we are scoring 4 objectives. We've got 1 objective in the center of the board, and then the players take it in turns to place the other 4 objectives. The other objectives needs to be at least 12 inches away from each other and at least 6 inches away from any board edges. You score 2 victory points for each objective marker that has at least 1 of your models and no enemy models within 3 inches of it. You score 1 victory point for each objective marker that has both friendly and enemy models within 3 inches of it, but more friendly than enemy models. 1 victory point for wounding or killing the enemy leader, and 1 victory point for breaking the enemy force. An interesting matchup. You're probably not that outnumbered in this game, huh? It's an objective one, so one that you could win, but also Fight 5 cavalry have the possibility to just ride down your Dunedain.
I'm not that outnumbered. I think it was still 2-1 at least.
Sure. He probably had at least like 35 guys.
Yeah. I did do a terrible job of taking pictures of this because, Ben, I was worse for drink. We'll blame it on that. I was definitely very bleary-eyed and not really thinking about this game particularly, and didn't play it overly well. So yeah, we'll sort of get into one of our two pictures here. If you're viewing, you can see this, and if you're listening, I will describe it to you or bring you a box. I'm never not going to make that joke anymore. It's just so good. It's also sad.
For the next 61 episodes, Sam will
Damn
make that.
straight. No, so basically, I deployed like 6 inches off the backboard edge. Um,
Sure.
I think I had one. I sort of like weighted one of my flanks because he deployed first. I want to. It doesn't matter. So, but basically, I sort of had a semicircle of guys. What my right hand flank was closer to my board edge. My left hand flank was slightly pushed up a little bit more. And there was a reasonable size. We were playing on this little like. I think it's supposed to be like the dead of Dun Harrow's like undead city. The roads are like skulls.
Oh, they are cobblestone skulls. Okay.
Yeah, so essentially a city. There was a pretty big ruin in the middle, and he sort of split between them. Turn one, I went to Hagen. He just moved everyone forwards. He left Theoden like kind of far back. He sent some guys off to take back objectives, and then the rest of his army just plowed forwards. I did some shooting. I backed up with, or I made sure that my right hand side, right hand flank was out of charge range. He had Dernhelm, Eomer over there, and on the other flank he had Elfhelm, Deowine, and Gamling. But I left a couple of rangers within charge distance of some of his models on that side. Importantly, Aragorn was within 6 inches of my whole battle line, so wherever he put a model, basically, I could get Aragorn into, which was kind of my plan. So turn 2, he charges in, he takes that bait, whether it wasn't really bait, it was kind of like this is what his army does. He did a bunch of throwing, have a bunch of throwing weapons as well, I guess, which I hadn't really thought about, but I think I did enough damage that he like didn't really want to risk having a shooting war with me. So he charges in. Aragorn is able to get into combat with a rider, as is Elro here, and I think I put Legolas and Gimli into the combat with Aragorn. Basically, I pile a bunch of heroes into this combat with Aragorn. Aragorn uses a free heroic combat. Elro here spends a point of might for combat. I kill both of the models they're in combat with, and then essentially just put a fight 6 model into combat with every single one of his riders that he's charged with. So now I'm getting equal or more dice into, or maybe there was one that he was just like I couldn't fit around the terrain, but basically now I have equal or more dice with the high fight in every fight, and I kill 5 of his models this turn and only lose 1 Dunedain. Turn 3 goes to me. We're like well and truly jammed in there now. We get a move off. The move goes to me. I'm able to surround Gamling. Basically, like have his left hand flank, which has truly been blunted now. It's basically just heroes kind of left. Is surrounded. He does manage to get his right hand flank into basically just a bunch of rangers and halberd at this point. So I kill another 5 models this turn, but lose 4, which is not great. I do kill Gamling through a heroic defense, which was pretty nice.
Oh, yeah.
Turn 4 goes to Hayden. The move goes to me again. We basically get some more fights here. I think I strike with... I think Eladan's fighting... I want to say Dernhelm and... Eladan's fighting, I think it's Dernhelm and Eomer, and like strikes to a 7 and gets killed this turn. So now Elro here is going crazy to try and kill Eomer. 5 goes to me again. This time I am able to. I think I heroic combat with Gimli. No, at some point in time, Gimli is like chasing down Theoden. And Gimli's like...
He's very dangerous over
short
distances.
He's very dangerous over short distances. And he manages to get into Theoden. I think Hagen pulled back Dernhelm and Eomer to fight Gimli as well. So Gimli struck, Theoden struck, Eomer struck, and Deowine also struck, but he was fighting Aragorn off on the flank, so it doesn't matter. So, yeah, it was Gimli fighting Theoden and Eomer, and Gimli rolls like a 2 or something. and goes to 8. So I was like, well, hey, Gimli's dead now. That's really annoying. But then like Hagen rolls a 2 high as well, or something. So he's less than me. Gimli gets the 6, and then to wound Theoden, I think he needs 6s. Rolls
Probably 5s. Surely defense 7 Theoden, strength 5 Gimli.
strength 4 Gimli.
Oh, just kidding.
Yeah. But doesn't matter to Gimli because I pick up those dice band and roll a 6, and a 5, and I spend his last point of might to guarantee kill Theoden. So Gimli
hell yeah!
chops him down. He chops down the horse master finally. Turn 6 goes to me. At this point, I think we're both broke. I kill Theoden, and he's broken. So now a bunch of his royal guard. I'm like, this is my chance. They might run away off these objectives. Unfortunately, he does a very good job of passing the courage test for the models on the objectives. I think over the course of like 2 turns, or like only one of them runs off his objective, and he's holding like 3 objectives with 1 model, and it's just like I also lose Halberad, but it doesn't really matter because he's kind of, I mean, it matters because I lose an objective by losing him, and there's a ranger like trying to chase down 1 rider or royal guard on the centermost objective, and he's within charge distance, and I got the move, or I got the priority, so I'm like gonna charge this dude. I've got 2 attacks. I'm gonna need 5s, and then I like, just biff the courage roll, and he runs off, which was really disappointing.
Oh, that's rough too. Because they're what, courage 4 or courage 5 on the range?
Courage 4, I believe.
So you need to roll a 6, and you've got a point of will to spend.
Yeah, which I'm thinking about it now. It's very possible. I think I just rolled like double 1s, but it would not have been impossible that I forgot that he had a point of will. But anyway, so like nothing else really happens. I on the last turn of the game, I get this. The only thing worth talking about is I get Eladan or Elrohir into Aomer because he has to charge him. Cause the heroic challenge because he has to. Aomer is luckily out of might at this point in time as well. I win the fight, and then I do like triple 6s, or maybe it's like it's triple 6s to wound Aomer, which was awesome. So Aomer takes 3 wounds. He like passes one or 2 of his fate, so he's still alive, and it doesn't matter. But it was very satisfying.
Next time if the game had continued,
he's toast, and Elrohir would have gotten some sweet might back. But yeah, so the game ended. It was a major loss to me. I did a bad job of writing down what the score was. But
he 1 for killing Theoden, 1 for breaking him, probably.
Yeah. And then I think
2 versus however many objectives he was holding.
I think I was broken, so he got 1. Didn't do anything to Aragorn. I think he was holding 3 objectives. He was like, I think I've lost this. I think I've lost this for a couple turns. And there was a couple turns there where it like could have gone the other way. And
if his guys had run off the objectives, they're not bodyguard anymore.
Yeah, for sure. But it was sort of best case scenario, I think, for this game, because I just like absolutely rolled his army. Like, yes, I lost a bunch of rangers. He did end up killing Legolas, Halberad, and Eladan, but I just picked apart like the Riders of Theoden as an army. I don't particularly enjoy fighting. I think they're very good and really tough, and this army just was very satisfying to play into them because it just like ripped them to shreds.
Awesome.
But so, in the sense that it was probably the best case scenario of a game where I was just like, pick up that expensive model, pick up that expensive model, pick up that expensive model. He still won the game. So it was sort of like he got to remove a bunch of models and like didn't do that much to me and still won. So, best case
very
scenario
cool
there. But a fun game, and a shame I only managed to get those 2 pictures. But if you're listening, it doesn't matter. If you're listening, I took thousands, and they're all awesome.
They're amazing, so good. Each one perfectly framed, better than the last.
All right, Ben. Let's get into your 4th game.
All right, Sam. So for my 4th game, I was playing against James, and it's funny you should mention we went out drinking last night, and we came back to the Middle Earth Hall with a giant bottle of, was it brandy?
No, it was bourbon, Ben.
Was it bourbon? Oh, forgive me, alcohol gods, for I have sinned. Anyway, turns out my opponent today, James, and I had been sitting across the table that we actually ended up playing on the night before, drinking and chatting and hanging out and talking about the day, and then we woke up the next morning. I think I was a little rough around the edges, maybe more so than him, and we ended up playing on the table which we had been drinking on, although we had swapped sides. So maybe if I'd had my original side, it would have gone differently. And we were, getting ahead of myself here. We were playing capture and control, Sam.
Yes, you sure were, Ben. And as Captain Carrot says, you were worse for drink. All right, capture and control. If you're viewing, you can see this deployment map. If you're listening, you know what I'll do. I'll describe it to you. Or I'll bring you a box. It's funny every time.
I'm laughing because I know it's coming.
All right, so you've got basically a 24-inch up deployment zones that's broken into two 12-inch sections. You've got, using the patented Ben Gallagher descriptor, you've got 5 objectives on the table, like a 5 pattern on a dice. 1 in the center, and then the other 4 you can figure out where they go. And if you want to, basically, every time you deploy a warband, you roll a dice, and on 1 to 3, they have to deploy closer to the center of the board edge. Otherwise, they can deploy anywhere. If you want to all deploy your entire warband close to the center, don't really have to roll. We've got controlling the objectives. At the start of the game, all objectives are considered to be neutral and do not belong to either side. If, during the end phase of any turn, one or more of your models is in base contact with an objective, then that objective marker comes under your control. If during the end phase both sides have a model in base contact with the objective marker, then it's flipped back to neutral. We have a game that lasts until one side has been broken, and then on a 1 or a 2 it ends. You score 2 victory points for each objective marker that is under your control at the end of the game. You score 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader, and you score 1 victory point for breaking the enemy. All right, Ben. So what were you playing in capture and control?
Well, we were playing on a board that was the Gates of Erebor, and James had the hometown advantage with the army of Thror, led by none other than Thror himself with a warband full of Grimhammers. Then he had Thrain with a full warband of Erebor dwarves. Then he had Dane Ironfoot on the pig, but just by himself, no Ironhills dwarves with him. Then he had a captain of Erebor with a bunch of dwarves, and last but most certainly not least, the Ironhills Ballista with the old twirly whirlies.
So fucking stupid.
Yes, they are. So we get into some deployment, and there is this big gate of Erebor, essentially in the middle of the board, with the central objective in the archway of the gate. The gate's running sort of north-south down our deployment zones, very effectively making 2 flanks to the board. But if you can control the gate, you can move between the 2 flanks of the board. If you don't control the gate, you cannot. So it's an interesting game. I decided to heavily weight one flank, completely ignore the other flank objective. I was going to fight over the center objective in the gate and the objective to the right, as well as sort of protecting my back objective with a scattering of rangers. And I was going to ride my Citadel Guard around the flanks to go harass the Ballista and potentially threaten the other objectives. And James set up Thror in front of my army. Thrain and the Erebor captain are on the other side of the gate, and Dane is set up down this alleyway of Grimhammers, ready to come charging into my warriors of Minas Tirith. But you know, Sam, no matter what comes down that alleyway of dwarves, they are still men of Gondor, and they're backed up by a wizard. I took turn 1 priority and got ready with us 2 dice Sorcerer's Blast, spent 2 will from my store, 1 for free, the Sorcerer's Blast, that endmost dwarf into Dane. Unfortunately, Gandalf flubbed his roll, and we did not manage to Sorcerer's Blast the dwarf into Dane. But we did have James sweating from turn 1. Whereupon, battle lines lock, we fight it out. I take 2 casualties, and get 2 kills and take 4 casualties, which was not the start we wanted. Yeah. I probably should have been a little bit more aggressive with my heroes in this game, but I was sort of holding them back. I take turn 2 priority, and Dane calls a move, which Madril counter moves, and the move off goes to Dane, and the battle lines re-engage. Gandalf spends 2 points of will in an attempt to Sorcerer's Blast Dane off his pig, and this time succeeds, knocking a Grimhammer into Dane's combat and knocking the whole combat over. So I move Boromir close by. Boromir calls a heroic combat, dismounts from his horse, goes charging down the lane of dwarves into Dane's combat. And then we take 2 points of fate and 2 wounds off of Dane this turn, but do not manage to kill him. On the other flank, Thrain and the captain of Erebor have been pushing my scattering of backfield defense, which is like 4 Rangers of Gondor and 3 Warriors of Minas Tirith. I definitely should have pulled more warriors back, but I wanted to be punching through the back lines. And I also had this weird, third line of warriors whose job was to take the ballista shots. So when the ballista was potentially going to hit a spear support and knock down my whole spear line, or take one of my heroes out of a key place, I wanted to make sure I had guys back there that I could scatter the ballista bolt onto. So I didn't really have enough guys, and Thrain calls a heroic combat this turn in an attempt to chop through my stalling tactics. And these guys actually, despite being few, did a great job of stalling the dwarves this game. My hammer that was supposed to punch through the dwarves did not punch through terribly well. And then we have a shot there of the old twirly whirlies knocking down a cluster of guys who are waiting in the backfield. Again, I only get one kill this turn. Take 7 casualties, but we do manage to kill Dane this turn, so that is quite nice. And essentially, what happens is, it goes the way you'd expect. Thror and the captain of Erebor are able to punch through on the flank, despite me having Theodred over there. Theodred does a great job of cleaning through dwarves. I wish I'd used him more aggressively on the front lines instead of using him in the backfield to protect my objective. I think he killed about 6 or 7 of the warband, with Thrain and the captain in there, and my rangers and warriors of Minas Tirith were able to very effectively stall them off. But it didn't matter. They did manage to take that objective towards the end of the game. The battle for the center objective also didn't go my way. My Fountain Court did a great job standing up to the Grimhammers, but the Grimhammers kill Fountain Court on 5s when they go two-handed with those axes, and the Fountain Court needs 6s to kill the Grimhammers. So despite me having the high fights, I just wasn't able to chip through them, and they were able to chip through me. So we lost the center, the fight for the gate. Towards the end of the game, I did manage to have Thror surrounded, kept knocking him over with Sorcerous Blast and immobilizing him, but we were just not able to get any wounds through on Thror. We managed to use his Arkenstone save once and a Point of Fate, but no wounds were actually dealt to Thror, unfortunately. We did kill Dane. I took 3 points of Fate off of Thrain as well, with Theodred before Theodred died, but ultimately I lost this game. It was a 9-0 loss. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time sending my Citadel Guard on these flanking missions. One of them pulled, I think, 6 dwarves out of Thrain's warband to protect the leftmost objective. They sort of ended up having this anti-cavalry formation where they sort of strung dwarves just less than the cavalry base apart across the field, so there wasn't anywhere for him to go. And then he was just sitting there taking plunking shots with his longbows, not getting any kills, but definitely just pulling more than his points worth of dwarves off the table. And I did something very similar with the other one, with the ballista, where I sent the ballista sent him around the back, down the flank, to harass the ballista. And essentially the ballista crew had to leave the ballista alone to keep the Citadel Guard boxed into the corner, so that he couldn't ride off to go get the objective, but they couldn't fire the ballista, and they of course couldn't walk more than 6 inches away from the ballista to go harass him. So a great game, well played by James. I don't think I played it terribly well, but I had a great time playing it nonetheless. It was a 9-0 loss.
All right. Well. I guess that's what happens when you fight dwarves with soup.
Yeah, and I wish, like I said, if I'd been a bit more aggressive with my heroes, maybe it would have gone differently. If Theodred had been on the front lines, and even if I'd put Gandalf into combat, I was hanging him back to make the most of his magic, so they wouldn't, lose the move offs or whatever. Sometimes you gotta have him in the fights, and I think this was one of those games. He's a strength 5 cavalry model; he could be killing dwarves.
For sure. All right, should we move on into our final games?
All right, Sam, tell me all about it. Round 5. Did you finally get the kill pool?
No. Boo hiss. We played the Maelstrom pool. It was a bit of a shame. The kill pool was was perhaps my chance to win another round, but alas, no kill pool. Nope, we played Hold Ground, Ben. Do you want to give us a quick run through of Hold Ground, and I'll tell you who I was playing and what they were playing?
Yeah, I will. I feel like there's one scenario in each pool that's good for you, except the kill pool, in which case they're most of them are good for you. All right, Hold Ground. We have a central objective and a game that ends on a 1 or a 2 at the end of a turn in which one force has been broken. The armies enter via the Maelstrom of Battle special rule. You score 3 victory points if you have more models within 6 inches of the central objective marker than your opponent, 5 victory points if you have twice as many models within 6 inches of the central objective than your opponent, and 7 victory points if you have 3 times as many models within 6 inches of the center objective than your opponent. 1 victory point for wounding the enemy leader, and 2 if you kill them, 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken, and 3 if they are broken and you are not.
Yes. So I was playing against Jeremy, who was a super great opponent. I think kind of new-ish to the game, or certainly didn't have a super big collection, because he basically played the army he said he could make 1,000 points with, which was Isengard, Ben. Near and dear to my heart. Led by Saruman, the White Wizard. No Grima, luckily for me. Lurtz, Mahur, and Vrashku. But it's stuff like Vrashku's or Mahur's warband of marauders all had bows and shields. So, basically trying to fill some points there.
Fighting for points there.
Yeah, and we were playing on a Lake Town board, which is a pretty cool board. The water all counted as frozen, so you could move over it. It was kind of weird because in some directions there was like loads of terrain for because the docks and stuff are on different levels. So in some ways there was like loads of terrain for me to use and benefit from Elven Cloaks, and then in some ways like absolutely nothing to hide behind. It was rather funny. So I won turn 1 priority. My whole army deploys as a single warband. I rolled a 4. Just walked on from the side of the table I was standing. Jeremy rolled a 5 with Saruman and his big warband, so he came on the right-hand flank, or my right-hand flank. 4 with Mahur, so Mahur came up, and his army of bows came from the opposite side of where I deployed. Vrashku also was on the right-hand flank, and Lurt sort of ended up, I think, basically deploying in the corner, so he had sort of like the 2 sides of the board as we rushed through the middle. Turn 2, I called a march, so I could get a bunch of my heroes off and down and hiding behind, because the crossbows were on one side and the bows were on the other side. So, the crossbows were on my right flank and the bows were directly in front of me, where there was basically no terrain to really hide behind. So, I could hide from the crossbows but still get shot at by the bows. And there were these kind of pillar little supports of the dock that came up higher than the surface that I would hide behind and get some in the ways, which made me get my Elven Cloaks. Anyway, so I marched so I could get some heroes hidden, and also so I could move 4.5 inches and shoot, and I managed to kill 2 Uruk-hai with shooting this turn. I should also say that Jeremy had a drum, so he was just drumming and pushing to the center. Turn 2 went to him, and so I marched and whatever. Turn 3 went to me, I marched as well. Got 2 more kills with shooting. I was just shooting at Uruk-hai scouts because they were only defense 4, so I needed 5s to kill them. Turn 4 went to Jeremy, and at this point in time, he just started blobbing his Uruk-hai into the center of the board, and I'm able to get I got Aragorn into combat, and Aragorn was able to get into combat, and also I think both the twins, Eladan and Elrohir, were also into combat with him, or there was a ranger, so he called the combat for free, killed the one Uruk-hai they were fighting. Aragorn jumped up on this higher level where there was loads of Uruk-hai still, and the twins sort of separated and killed some more models. I managed
Classic
to kill,
Aragorn, chopping through Uruk-hai.
Right, I killed 7 Uruk-hai this turn.
Damn.
So turn 5 goes to Jeremy. I decide whatever. I'm not gonna. He's just gonna be charging me. I'm not that worried about it. Saruman uses a command on Legolas, and Legolas spends both his points of will to resist, and a point of might. And a point of might to resist. Legolas then calls a combat. I think Aragorn was trapped by a whole bunch of Uruk-hai at this point in time. It was,
it looks like it.
It was 4 into base contact, and they had a bunch of pikes. So I really wanted Legolas to be able to kill what he was fighting to peel off some other Uruk-hai. So Legolas and Halbarad call combats this turn because they're going to go rescue Aragorn. And we get into some fights, and I didn't spend anything with Aragorn because I wanted that extra to give him the extra point of might to fix any botches. I managed to peel some guys off with Halbarad. I think Legolas ended up not being able to kill them all, or couldn't get close enough to be able to really do anything. Aragorn did in fact botch his roll. He rolled a 2 high or something, maybe it was a 3, but Halberd with that sweet 6-inch banner was close by. Rerolled it, blam, got the 6, and then Aragorn cut the heads off 3 Uruk-hai. And I killed 9 Uruk-hai this turn, Ben. Turn 6 goes to me. I end up at... turn 6 goes to Jeremy again. We get a move off. The move off goes to Jeremy. Saruman tries to transfix Aragorn. He was spending his might to like get the 6, so Aragorn I think spent all his will and 2 might to resist. Because again, he was
can't have Aragorn. Can't have him transfixed.
Yeah, maybe a little unnecessary. But we get some more combats. Halberd is fighting Mahur, so he strikes. We get a combat with Gimli. Aragorn uses another point of might to win his fight, but kills some more models. And it's basically we're just like absolutely cutting through Uruk-hai. I kill another 9 Uruk-hai. Turn 7 goes to Jeremy as well. There's another move off. The move goes to him. This time he successfully immobilizes Aragorn, but at this point there are like no Uruk-hai really left in the center, and I have enough bodies to make Aragorn really only be fighting 1, and I was fine with that. I kill another 6 Uruk-hai this turn. Turn 8 he uses the Palantir. I have Eladan within charging distance of Saruman. There's another move off, and it goes to Jeremy again. So we did win all 3 of the move offs, which was a little bit unfortunate. He Sorcerous Blasts Eladan basically out of there, but not a huge. I think I spent his will and resisted it. We get into combats. I kill 4 Uruk-hai. I also kill Lurtz and Mahur this turn. And at this point he's well and truly broken, and the game just like keeps going. I managed to kill all of the Uruk-hai he has in the center, and he runs off with Saruman, and he's just left with Varashku and his warband. Varashku and his warband of like 4 or 5 crossbows.
Wait, Saruman ran off the board?
No, he like ran away. He like was like, I'm not in the center anymore. I'm gonna run over here. So then I basically like moved all of my rangers so they couldn't easily be shot, stood there with my heroes and were like shooting at Saruman to try and get the wound. The game eventually ended. I didn't wound Saruman. And it was a 10-0 major victory to the Grey Company.
Nice way to end the tournament.
Yeah. Jeremy's super good opponent. I mean, and this was kind of the opposite of my last game, where like I was still making him pick up fistfuls of models, but he didn't win the game. So like he really like he didn't kill any of my big heroes. I think he only killed like 2 or 3 of my rangers. It was like absolutely brutal.
Definitely once you had engaged, I think the terrain definitely benefits you. It's very hard to sort of swarm around you on this board and make the most of his numbers. And it sounds like when he did have you surrounded, you just were able to win those fights and chop your way through.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I have 5 heroes who are fight 6, 1 hero who's fight 5, a 6-inch banner, and then all of my troops are fight 4 with 2 attacks and a banner reroll, because we're like blob together, so just,
And they've all got spears. They can just spear support the big heroes if you need them to.
Yeah, so it was, I think it was a tough matchup for him. And
in this pool, this is definitely, I said at the beginning, there's 1 mission in each pool that's good for you, except for the kill pool. This is the mission in the Maelstrom pool that's good for you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Ben, should we get into your final game?
All right, Sam, let us do it. I was playing against Matt, a Patreon of the show, who I have played against before, and we were also playing Hold Ground. So you don't have any reading to do, because I already read it. And Matt had brought his super cool, super thematic Defenders of Erebor Legendary Legion, led by Old King Dane, Brand, Thorin III, an Iron Hills captain, and a captain of Dale. So Matt wins the first turn priority, not necessarily the one that you want to win. He rolls with Brand and Thorin first, and they both get like a 5 and come in on the western board edge. And then Dane rolls a 3, and I bring him in on the eastern board edge. I didn't bring him all the way in on the corner. I mean, we're playing on bottom tables here, but neither did I just put him in the center of the board edge. I put him about a third of the way down the opposite side of the board edge from Thorin and Brand. The Iron Hills captain rolls a 1 this turn, and the captain of Dale rolls a 4, and after oscillating back and forth, decides to spend a point of might so that he can come on the board, turn it into a 5 so that he can come on the board next to King Dane. I roll a 4. I roll a 4 with Theodred, a 5 with Boromir, a 5 with Madril, and a 5 with Gandalf. So I'm effectively, with the exception of Theodred, my whole army comes in on the same board edge as Dane, not all that far away from him. I came in the center of that board edge because I am trying to rush to the center of the board before Matt, and Theodred is riding up behind my army. And I take the next turn priority and call a heroic march with Madril, and basically move everyone as far as they can. I ran Boromir all the way into the center of the board because I had this vision of Boromir in the center of the board with his flag and a ring of warriors of Minas Tirith around him, and we were just going to hold the center. So I just rushed Boromir forwards. It probably wasn't the best place to put him, and Matt did take a couple of bow shots at him this turn in an attempt to take him off his horse. But he survived that okay. So I take the next turn priority, and at first Matt elects not to call any actions. So I call yet another march with Madril, a second march with Madril, and then King Dane. I should note too that the captain of Dale last turn, the one that was with Dane, also called a march. So Dane's warband is catching up to my army. They're just behind my army. So then Dane elects to spend his first point of might to call a move. So I decide not to counter move with anybody. Madril's not going to get engaged by Dane and his warband. He's in the middle of the clump that is my army, so he'll be safe. So Dane engages the back of my army, I think in an attempt to slow me down, to stop me reaching the center of the board. And I hummed and hawed a little bit. I was contemplating, well, do I just not call at the double with Madril? Do I leave the warband here? But in the end, what I decided to do is move some pieces first so that they could engage the dwarves back a little bit, not completely give up. Because the other thing I contemplated doing was just moving everyone to the center of the board and giving up the 6 or so models that have been captured by Dane. Sure. But I didn't really want to give them up either, because then he already outnumbers me, and he would really outnumber me. So we move Boromir first. Boromir engages the goat rider that you can see just above the woods there. A chunk of my army moves away, but some of them go to engage the dwarves. And in the combat phase, Boromir calls a heroic combat, has to spend a point of might to win that combat, but is then able to get much closer to the fight that's going on, get his banner nearby, and I managed to get 4 kills this turn and only take 3 casualties in return. So not the combat phase that Matt was hoping for. I take turn 4 priority. And Dane calls another move, which I do not answer. I'm fairly sure that Boromir felt fairly safe where he was, and as far as the rest of the battle line were, they were, shield walls locked. It didn't really matter to me if I moved first or second over there. So Dane goes ahead and moves. I should note too that in the last 2 turns, the Iron Hills captain has rolled 1s to arrive on the board, and so has not yet arrived. So Dane wins the move off. He re-engages the battle line, and I pull back with Theodred and Gandalf this turn. Gandalf, in fact, calls a heroic combat, and we get a lot of kills this turn. We managed to kill 6 of Dane's warband, and only take 2 casualties in return. The Iron Hills captain finally arrives this turn, rolls a 3, and turns it into a 4, so that he can come in on the center of the southern board edge and run up the road to the middle of the board. So this is probably, I think this picture is probably, yeah, look, there's the Iron Hill captain just arriving on the southern board edge. Boromir, Gandalf, Theodred are all off fighting Dane all the way near the, I guess that's like the western board edge or eastern board edge. I get my directions muddled up. And Thorin and Brand are approaching the middle, but I've run forwards my thin line of warriors of Minas Tirith. You can see what I did here is I ran them forwards and left myself a shooting alley, but I'd taken priority, so Matt basically just moved his entire army so that my block of rangers in the center there didn't get any shots this turn. But that's okay, Sam, because I keep winning the priorities this turn. What turn are we on here? We are on turn 5, where Ben once again wins priority. On Dane's flank, Dane decides to keep his last point of might. The captain over there is out of might. Dane's got 1 point of might left, decides to keep his might. Gandalf throws an immobilize at him, which Dane resists. And then we charge back into combat over there. Gandalf and Theodred both fight a dwarf. Gandalf calls a heroic combat. Theodred calls a strike. And we get into Dane. Dane counter strikes. I think Dane actually won the fight. but wasn't able to do any wounds. He like flubbed his wound roll, but he definitely won the first fight. I think I flubbed my strike roll. Dane got the 6. Fought back my heroes. In the center of the board, of course, Thorin has arrived. Thorin calls a heroic combat. Bran gets a free heroic combat because Dane is trapped. And Bran then spends a point of might to get a kill, because basically Matt needs Thorin and Dane to really do some work over here. Thorin had called a move, but did not manage to get it for free with his cunning mind. I forget what the special rule's called.
Cool-headed, I believe.
Cool-headed. I was cunning mind. I was in the ballpark. All right, so I once again take priority for turn 6. We re-engage Dane. We basically just throw Theoden into Dane. Gandalf and Boromir come riding back towards the center of the board because they are needed over there. We got to deal with the threat that is Thorin punching through my battle lines. This turn, Theoden kills Dane, which is quite satisfying. And basically, Thorin and Brand are able to punch through my lines, but not quick enough. Gandalf and Boromir arrive just in the nick of time. The Iron Hills captain arrives only to get killed by Boromir this turn. Like, he gets into combat with one of my rangers. Boromir countercharges him. Boromir wins the fight, kills the Iron Hills captain this turn. Brand is also killed this turn. He loses a strike off against Gandalf. Gandalf strikes to a 3. Brand strikes to a 2. So, like, you know, I didn't roll great on my strike, but just well enough. And Gandalf kills Brand this turn. And basically, I think that was really Matt's last hope. Was, you know, when that hero, he's now only got one hero left on the board in the center there. I've essentially been able to keep him at bay long enough for my heroes to arrive. And we're both killing lots of models. Like, I would lose 4, he would lose 5. I would lose 5, he would lose 4. Kind of, you know, over the turns. But the Iron Hills captain arriving late, and I'm not sure that engaging with Dane was actually the right move. It did stall me, but it didn't stall me long enough because my mounted heroes were basically able to bounce back into the center of the board. Well, there's the last stand of Dane, look. So my pictures are clearly way behind what I'm talking about, but that's okay. And this game shakes out to a 6-1 to me. Matt wins only 2 priorities all game. He won the first priority and the last priority. Managed to get Thorin into Gandalf. Manages to win the fight. There's Thorin. Thorin calls a heroic combat. Chops through there. Ties up one of the rangers. Is able to get into Gandalf and takes 3 fate off of Gandalf, but is not able to wound him. We are both broken. And it is a 6-1 victory to me. The final count with the center objective was 14 of Matt's models and 16 of mine. So you know, a couple of kills here, a couple of kills there, and it could have been his center objective. So a really fun game, a great way to end the tournament. And once again, it's awesome to play against Matt because his army's. I just really like the aesthetic of the army. Yeah. It's well painted, but it's also like I just like the tone of the colors that he hits. I think it looks really cool.
Yeah. I certainly I think it's an awesome looking army, and I certainly appreciate, you know, somebody or the more people being out there bringing sort of armies they think are cool and are fun and thematic and not just like ridiculous soup combinations.
Yeah, like Boromir and Gandalf.
And Theoden.
Oh, so disappointing.
Oh well. Should have played the Pairs of the Druidan then.
I should have done. I'd have had more fun with it, that's for sure.
Yeah. Plus you would have got to talk about your Pukul men all the time.
Oh, it's true. I could have had Pukul men objective markers. It would have been so good.
All right, Ben, let's move into the closing down this episode. How do you remember where you ended up placing?
I believe I was 46 of 83 or something like that.
That is the case too, and I think I was like 10 places below, like 56 or
54 or something, 56?
Something like that. I had 3 major losses and 2 major wins, whereas I think you had a minor loss in there somewhere. So
yeah, I managed to sneak a minor loss against the Balrog.
Bumped you up a little bit. But let's go through some placings. Like we said, we did do this the last episode, but we'll go through it again. So in 3rd place we had Caleb, who I believe was playing a silly soup army.
It was.
In 2nd place we have Mitchell of the Durin Show, playing Durin himself.
Green Alliance Khazad-dûm is taking 2nd place at Nova. Awesome. Absolutely awesome.
And then in 1st place, Big Al the Desolator of the North, I believe his Instagram now calls him, which is awesome. And he was playing Tom Bombadil in Silly Soup. So yeah, cool there. And then we had the Challenger of Champions, Scott, who I believe was the person who lost on fighting for first place, so lost on the final table. Best display was Jimmy. He had the Barad-dûr and Orthanc display board that I think Ben put some pictures up on Instagram. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at the Challenger of Champions was also a silly soup list. It was like the Witch King and the Dragon Emperor, which is maybe not that silly of a soup list, but it's a little soupy.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's at least, you can argue a theme there. They're allies, or I don't know. And then Jimmy's is, of course, Saruman and the Witch King, which is also a bit of a soup army too. So that's what I was laughing at.
And
all soup, nothing but soup.
And then best painted army was Stephen, which I believe was his three-peat, 3 Novas in a row. He's
nice hat trick.
Won best painted. Best painted model, single model, was Super Gandalf, painted by yours truly. So that was exciting. Favorite good army was Ted's Silly Soup army. And then there was a tie for favorite evil army, which was John and Zach. I think that was Isengard and the
Mumuk War Leader
was the Mumuk War Leader. Yeah. So there we have it. That's the Nova GT all wrapped up. In 2 short weeks, we'll be releasing an episode covering the Nova doubles. Yes, we are going to squeeze one more episode out of Nova. And then we'll not quite sure what the next episode after that is going to be, because neither Ben nor I have a tournament we're attending between now and when we need to release it. So who's to say what it'll be? There will be something, almost definitely. All right, Ben. Whew. Getting through it all. We're gonna go back. Set our episodes back probably about 10 or so, and do something we sort of forgot about since we started recording video rather than just audio, which is, of course, where can we find you next, Ben? So what's the next tournament you'll be attending?
Oh, you've caught me off guard, even though we've done this twice now. I will be attending the Once More Unto the Paths of the Dead. That's right. We are not returning to Return to Paths of the Dead, or returning to Return to Paths of the Dead. We are once more to the Paths of the Dead, which I believe is the 18th and 19th of October.
Nope,
I got that right?
19th and 20th.
19th and 20th of October, and that is at ArmorCon in Massachusetts. 700 points. You can use the new Angmar book, Sam, so maybe you should speed order some Khan Doom guys.
700 points of Khan Doom is too many.
No,
too many boxes of Khan Doom. But there's also, I think, there's a painting requirement, which I would not get that done. If is it Alex who's running that? If he waves painting for me and I can play Khan Doom, I'll consider it.
Would not be good at 700 points.
No, it would be terrible, but it would be fun. Well, maybe, who's to say. All right, well, on to what I am doing, Ben, because
what are you doing, Sam?
For this. The very next event I will be attending will be I believe it's the Battle for Lancaster Fields 3, I think is what it's called. It is, in fact, the Battle of Lancaster Fields 3, which is run by the Desolator of the North himself, Big Al. I've never actually managed to make it to one of his events, so I'm excited for that. I think it is 750 points. It is, in fact, 750 points, but it's kind of unique. It's optional, bring 2 lists, so a good and an evil list. The scenarios are predetermined, so once you know your opponent and know the scenario, you can pick one of your 2 lists to play, which is pretty cool.
It is cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, so that would be pretty interesting. Still lets you kind of min-max, but yeah, so that would be fun.
It does, but you have to think about your min-maxing a little bit.
Yeah. And then after that, I have an event on December 7th, I think it is. I will double check that date. It is, in fact, December 7th. Look at this, I'm nailing it. And that is 554 points. No named heroes, and that is at Shorehammer, which is in Ocean City, Maryland. So I'm pretty excited for that. Yeah, so that's where you can find us. Ben, I believe you have an event listing that we were asked to give a little bit of a shout out to.
Yes, that is, of course, the Sand Hills of Rune. I believe it's the third iteration of that, and it is the 17th and 18th of November, I believe. Unfortunately, Sam and I are not going to be able to make it this year, which is a shame. The guys in the Southeastern League put on an awesome event. It is 588 points, stressing theme, although there are no hard requirements or restrictions on lists.
I believe John, the organizer, is having final veto on somebody's list. I think that's in there, that he can be like, dude, come on, this is.
That's event. Nice. It's his event. That's awesome. Absolutely. But it's fun that he wrote it in there.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, sad to not make that one. One day, we'll get down to one of his events and really, we'll really look forward to it. All right, Ben. Is there anything else you wish to plug, to talk about?
The location of that event, I just got it on my phone here, is at Hobbytown in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So if you happen to be in the area and you're not signed up for it, go check it out.
Or if you're not in the area and want to drive, definitely going to be worth a drive.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Ben. Anything else, or are we good to sign off episode 61?
I think that is it for this episode, Sam.
All right. Well, until next time. See ya. Thank you for listening to Gondor Calls for Ale. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. We, at Gondor Calls for Ale, are officially sponsored by the Baron of Dice, the producer of premium wargaming dice. These beautifully hand-swirled resin dice have no micro bubbles and are therefore perfectly balanced. With over 3,000 variants and unique designs, nearly every tabletop gaming system is represented. So check out the description of this episode for a link and a discount code. Go buy yourself some new dice and let the good times roll. We at Gondor Calls for Ale are not associated with Games Workshop, New Line Cinema, or the Tolkien Estate. We hope we have not misrepresented or offended anyone. These recordings are strictly recollections of games we've played and are not commentaries on the character or competence of our opponents. They are intended purely for entertainment, and we hope they will be taken as such. You can find us on Patreon, see the link in the description. Supporting Gondor Calls for Ale there helps us continue to produce these episodes. You can find us on Instagram at Gondor_calls_for_ale. Feel free to send us a message there. Or on Facebook as Gondor Calls for Ale, another great place to send us a message. Or you can send us an email at gondorcallsforale@gmail.com. As Boromir, Captain of the White Tower, once said, remember today, listener, today this episode was good.